Jill Stein, Harvard undergraduate, Harvard School of Medicine, practicing physician. Stein was endorsed for president in 2012 by Noam Chomsky and by Chris Hedges. She's a member of Physicians for Social Responsibility, helped found the Massachusetts Coalition for Healthy Communities. Jill Stein is running for president of the United States of America. And she also is seeking the nomination of the Green Party USA. Jill Stein.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. It's really an honor to be here. It's great to hear one of our other candidates, and there are many candidates. There are about 5 of us, I think, for the Green Party, and I think it's a sign of health that the party has many candidates representing diverse points of view, although I've got to say we all kind of have a very similar platform, and I think it's a great thing for the Green Party. So thanks for having a program that can accommodate us. And, thanks to the Orange County Greens for having this wonderful, timely program and hosting Chris Hedges, who I think has expressed so well this moment that we're in, this incredible existential moment of a moral imperative. And I will say, it makes me remember Rosa Clemente's wonderful point that the Green Party is also an imperative. It's no longer the alternative, it is now the imperative. In the same way that, that we have we're in an existential moment. And we are calling all rebels, and we are rebels. The rebellion, I think, is in full swing, and part of that rebellion must also be electoral. Because if we only fight out in the communities, if we're only fighting in the street, and we're not also fighting in the halls of power, then everything we accomplish will basically be steamrolled and for naught. So this is why I think it's so important that as a party we're doing what we're doing. So again, I applaud all of you who are part of the Green Party, or those of you who are here to check it out, and those of you who are leaning. I really encourage people to use your voter registration as an existential act, as a political act, as an act of rebellion, and take that rebellion into the voting booth. So I want to say a little bit about this amazing moment that we're in, because it's sort of it's both an historic crisis as well as an historic opportunity. And we see all around us this uprising for democracy and justice that is really sweeping the nation and the planet. The strike, the hunger strike at Dyett High School in Chicago for 32 days. Really amazing. They got a partial win out of that, but the fight is not over yet. The students who are fighting for free public higher education, and the Corinthian students who are boycotting their debt, their college debt, that's a struggle. The Black Lives Matter, incredibly inspiring struggle. The Dreamers. I don't know if you can remember back to 15 or 20 years ago, but we weren't seeing this kind of thing at all. And now this is the sign of the times, these acts of incredibly courageous rebellion. And this is the exciting thing. And people are calling for not only their own issue, but for a broader vision of democracy and justice, and for a world and a nation that works for all of us. And I think this is one of the biggest differences that we see now as organizers and activists, is that we're refusing to be separated into our individual struggles, and that we are unifying for a broader movement for people, planet, and peace over profit. And again, the Green Party provides an electoral framework. We used to look to political parties to bring us together, to reach critical mass, to have a unifying vision. We don't have that from, Democrats and Republicans. They've just been sold out and bought out. So we're not seeing a unifying vision there. And again, I think it falls to the Green Party to put this together for people. At the same time we're seeing this big vision, we're also seeing this big crisis. And indeed, it's the crisis that's really engaging people now and telling us that we must act, we must engage, and we must come together and not be divided and conquered, which is how they want us to be. And if you look at this crisis, it's really across the board, and it's global, and there's really no issue out there right now that isn't extremely precarious. If you look at the economy, they tell us we're in a recovery, but in fact, it's an emergency. Would you say? Yeah, right. And we're here to tell it like it is, and also how we can fix it. Because if we don't acknowledge what we're up against, we can't begin to move the solutions. While the unemployment rate has come down, to some 5% approximately now, why has it come down? In part because people are dropping out of the labor market. So you're not counted, if you're not actively seeking work in the last 4 weeks, you don't get counted. So that's part of what brings the numbers down. The numbers are also coming down because what kind of jobs are they creating now? They're creating part-time and temporary jobs that pay lousy wages and come with no benefits. Anybody know about those jobs? Yeah. And if you talk to people who are coming out of high school, who can't afford to go to college, or people who have gone through college and they got debt, that's all they see are these low-wage jobs, if any. So, we have an economic crisis. Part of that crisis is that we have 40 million young people, an entire generation of young people who are locked into debt, locked into predatory debt, which you cannot escape even through bankruptcy. Predatory debt that will follow you around into your retirement, to your old age, and it will harvest your Social Security. In debt for life, really a generation of debt at much higher interest rates, than you would pay on a mortgage. It's absolutely unbelievable that a generation is being used as a cash cow for predatory banks and that our government is right in the middle of it. If you look at healthcare that was supposed to have been fixed by Obamacare, well, I come from the state of Romney Care. Same thing, actually. We just had it for about 5 years before it became Obamacare. They passed it sight unseen. It was written in the back rooms in Massachusetts, on which the national bill was modeled. Written in the back rooms, nobody could read it, not even the legislators could read it. It was written by the lobbyists, by the pharmaceutical and insurance companies, and indeed that's who it serves. And what we found in Massachusetts after a few years was that people feel really good having their piece of paper, but the problem is if you get sick, you discover that there are holes in this plan big enough to drive a hearse through. And in fact, people are less cared for under Obama-Romney care than they are prior to that, because now we don't have the safety net institutions and the safety net hospitals and many of the community health centers and things like that we used to have. Medical bankruptcy has not been reduced one iota. So this is basically a boondoggle for insurance companies, and was used really to stave off the real solution, Medicare for all, which we must have. And which will save us. It doesn't cost us, it saves us. We can cover everybody, and we still save $400 billion a year by cutting out the waste and the incredible, massive red tape and bureaucracy of the private health insurance industry. So just by streamlining it, but like Medicare, the overhead goes way down, and we save a whole lot of money, and we get healthy. And when you get sick, you can focus on getting better, not on trying to figure out how you're supposed to pay for the thing. So it's inexcusable that we don't have this right If you look at the climate, it's an emergency almost too big to get your hands around. I drove down here from LA. It was 102 degrees in the car. And it's hot out there, and our air conditioner wasn't working in the car. And this is the future. This is what it looks like. We know that California has about a year of water left. We know that the ground is actually sinking because the underground water, the underground reservoirs are being drawn on as farmers dig their wells deeper. There were heat waves in Iran last week where the recorded temperature index, humidity index, which is basically what the temperature feels like, it felt like 165 degrees. We thought it was hot here today. 165 is the effective temperature that we're getting now. And maybe the most alarming news of all was hearing about 2 weeks ago the new study put out by Jim Hansen, the major climate scientist of North America, whose latest study says that sea level rise, that we always thought was going to be maybe 1,000 years away, and then maybe it was going to be a couple hundred years away. Well, now it's just a couple decades away that they are predicting at least 10 feet of sea level rise as some of the major ice sheets in the Antarctica and Greenland begin to break up on our current trajectory. And that's the really important take home. That's on our current trajectory. We are kind of on a doomsday scenario at the moment. But the take home here is that we can fix this. We don't have to have that. When people talk about the climate gloom and doom, they presume that we have a paralyzed political system. They talk about what's politically possible. Well, we need to start talking about what is necessary for humanity and kick out the politicians who don't act on those terms. If they think it's politically impossible, it's time to show them the door. Likewise, in terms of the racial justice crisis, I think we've seen the magnificent work done by Black Lives Matter, and they have done so much to raise consciousness. This is not a new crisis, as we know. This is basically a living legacy of the criminal institution of slavery, of Jim Crow, of redlining, of segregation, of the drug wars, and the prison state. This is nothing new. So in our campaign, we have adopted the plan of the Malcolm X grassroots movement, and they have a wonderful plan called a National Action Plan for Racial Justice Now. There's no reason not to solve this problem now. And I want to just make the point that these are not separate problems. These are all integrated with each other. In the same way that the problems converge, the solutions converge, and we can, in my view, we need to declare an emergency. We have a state of emergency, an economic emergency, a racial justice emergency, and a climate emergency. How about we fix them right now? In the Second World War, when Pearl Harbor was bombed, we declared an emergency. Well, what we're facing right now actually makes the Second World War look like small potatoes. This is far worse, it's far bigger, and there's no coming back from it, from all of these emergencies. So we need to actually declare the emergency. At the time they did this, after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, it took 6 months, 6 months to transform the economy. We did not have a wartime economy, but within 6 months, 25% of GDP, that's like a huge portion of the economy, had become a war economy that was prepared for war. Okay, they did that in 6 months. How about in the next 15 years, we go to 100% clean, renewable energy with water and sun. So we are calling for a Green New Deal, like the New Deal that helped get us out of the Great Depression. We need a New Deal now, which is also green, because that does a couple things. Number one, it puts everyone back to work with a full-time living wage job. Number two, it meets the needs of our communities to make them completely sustainable in terms of ecology, in terms of economy and social needs. So we're talking about converting our energy system, our food system, our transportation system, as well as meeting critical human needs for housing, schools, and healthcare. So the Green New Deal also turns the tide on climate change, because if we were at 100% clean renewable energy in 15 years, that is enough to turn the tide on climate change. And if the US begins to do this, we can then begin to set an example for the world to move forward, instead of playing the role of sabotaging the forward movement of the rest of the world, which is the role that the US has been playing in the UN climate conferences. So we need to turn that around. The Green New Deal also plays a very critical role because it makes wars for oil and other resources obsolete. So we can cut the friggin' military, bring the troops home, dismantle our bases, which get us into trouble, cut our military at least 50%. We're now spending $1 trillion a year. Have we made ourselves more safe? Hardly. Have we made the world more safe? No. Have we made the world more democratic and humane? Hardly. Exactly the opposite on all counts. Where the troops have gone in, we have been very good at creating failed states, at creating terrorist strongholds, and creating mass migrations of refugees. So, bottom line is, this is fixable. Let me also add to that, we can bail out students now. We bailed out the friggin' bankers. They caused the problem. The bankers caused the crisis with their waste, fraud, and abuse, yet we bailed them out against the will of the American people. The Barack Obama administration and both houses, both Democratic houses of Congress, bailed out the banks, gave away the store, inflicted an austerity budget. And in doing so, they provided $17 trillion worth of bailouts. We can bail out the students for $1 trillion plus change. We can do that. We can create a welcoming path to citizenship for the immigrant Americans who have always been the backbone of our society. I had the great pleasure last night of hearing Public Enemy 2.0. Anybody remember Public Enemy? Yeah, really amazing. The original hip-hop group. And they were playing at this sort of libertarian event that I went to. I always go to these libertarian events, and I'll tell you, I'm the only candidate there, so we are really getting together. It's amazing. The Green Party is becoming bigger all the time, I can't tell you. We're seeing socialists come into the Green Party. We're seeing a lot of libertarians work with the Green Party, especially the grassroots libertarians. Greens actually have a long history of principled grassroots libertarianism. Public Enemy was there last night performing, and they were saying, they were critiquing the Republican debate, saying, these guys are talking about building walls. Don't they know this is about tearing down walls? This is the age of tearing down walls, and they're absolutely right. And just a quick word about schools, because what they did at Dyett High School is so inspiring, where community members and grandmothers were on a hunger strike no solid food hunger strike for 32 days, and it would have gone on. There were many members who were going to just continue to the end, and other members of the community did not want to see that happen, so they called off the strike, but they're not done. It's so important, that all of us fight the privatization of our public school system. This is the theft of an essential public resource. We know that charterizing our schools does not improve them. In most cases, it makes them worse. It allows them, to basically cherry pick the students and take the ones who have enormous parental and community support and just dump the others. This is not helping. And when the Obama administration adopted its policy of closing 5,000 so-called poor performing, which means poor, schools, this has been a disaster, and it's been led by the Democratic Party, the Obama administration, the Rahm Emanuel administration in Chicago. So we need to stand up for our public schools and fight back, and there are a lot of students and teachers and communities that are ready to fight with us. So the bottom line is that, I used to think we had to work really, really hard to change people's minds. I was an advocate for many years before I became political. I got tricked into running for office one time back in 2002, and I ran against Mitt Romney for governor of Massachusetts. I had no idea what I was getting into. And I went into this debate. We fought our way into a debate because people did not want to hear this new form of torture that they call the American political debates. And people were screaming that they wanted to hear other voices and real voices. We were able to push our way into a televised debate. Inside the debate hall, I basically spoke up for the same agenda that you've just heard. And inside that TV studio, you can imagine those ideas went over like lead balloons. But when we walked out of the studio into the waiting press area, I was mobbed by the press, who told me that I had won the debate on the instant online viewer poll. And you can be sure that was the last time they did an instant online viewer poll of a debate. Because they want you to believe that what the media has to say about it is the reality. And we've seen that in the Republican debates. What most people don't know is that these are not public debates. This is a select audience. So when people are cheering madly for this craziness, for these buffoons, these really dangerous and pathological people, that's not the American public. What they're trying to do is to persuade people not to vote. They're trying to persuade people not to vote and to make you feel disempowered and unrepresented. But what they're really saying is that that's what the Republican and the Democratic parties, for that matter, are about. Anyhow, in that moment, I had this incredible epiphany when I thought, that I had totally bombed. I learned I won the debate, and I realized then that this whole political scene is basically a scam. It's essentially an amazing, elaborate propaganda exercise to make us feel disempowered and powerless. But the truth of the matter is that we are not powerless, we are powerful. We actually represent core American values. Believe it or not, this is how most people feel. You don't hear from them because they don't have the megaphone. The megaphone is in the hands of, the Koch brothers and the billionaires and the Democratic National Committee and all that. And that's why they control the debates. So I want to leave you with two things. One is that we have 2 court cases that have been filed. One has been filed and the other one is about to be, that are suing the Commission on Presidential Debates so that we can have real debates. So what we all can do here, one thing we can do right now, if you go to our website, which is jill2016.com, there's a petition that you can sign and get everybody you know to sign it. Because Anybody who's not on the payroll of the Democratic or Republican parties desperately wants this. Polls actually show that we'll put it this way, 50% of Americans now do not identify as either Democrat or Republican. So when they restrict the debate to just a Democrat and Republican, they are locking out 50% of voters. We have a right to vote, but we also have a right to know who we can vote for. So go to our website, sign our petition, send it around. You can also get on our newsletter and our email list or our Facebook page. We have handouts, just a flyer out there that you can pick up, because this is the age of crisis, but it really is the age of rebellion. We are that rebellion. The future is in our hands. Democracy is in our hands. Justice is in our hands. Peace is in our hands. The American people are clamoring for it. This is the revolt that we see going on inside of the Democratic Party within Sanders' campaign. What they don't know is that the Democratic Party has a kill switch that gets directed at campaigns that become a threat, and if the Sanders campaign becomes a threat, it will be terminated. And Bernie has already pledged allegiance to Hillary or whoever it is that will win the corporate process. So it's really important for us to build it, because they're gonna come. Get ready, there are going to be a lot of unhappy campers out there. They're being kind of smoke screened at the moment, but I don't think they're going to be happy little lemmings that are going to follow Bernie into the Democratic Party and into Hillary's campaign. So there are going to be a lot of people out there that are looking for a way forward. We got that way forward. It's in our hands. Join us and hold on to your hat. It's going to be an incredible ride. Thank you.
Por eso es que cuando canto, canto lo que el pueblo siente. Soy del pueblo, pueblo soy, y a donde me lleve el pueblo voy.